Hello, my name is Mark Smith, and I am your neurofeedback navigator, a neurofeedback gangsta. And I'm here today to talk to you about infraslow fluctuation training, which is different than other kinds of neurofeedback, and I'm going to talk about how that is. But the first thing I want you to know is that if you're going to do this kind of training, you absolutely need different kinds of equipment than the typical, if you will, neurofeedback provider. And one of those things you need is a DC coupled amplifier. DC is direct current. And if there's direct current in that amplifier, it helps those little tiny infraslow fluctuations to be clarified, to be trained. So you have that, and you have special electrodes, and then you have to manage it a little differently than you would neurofeedback, typical neurofeedback. But that's what you need. That's what's necessary. Now, what's different about infraslow than typical frequencies that makes it, in quotes, special or different? Well, for one, it determines the excitability of faster frequencies. Let me say that again. It determines the excitability of faster frequencies. Not unlike your thermostat at home, when you turn it up, you get more heat. You turn it down, you get less heat. Well, that's what we're doing in Cortex with this. We can direct our training towards very particular brain areas, turn them up in excitability and turn them down in excitability. For instance, if somebody comes in with anxiety and their DACC right up here at the top of their heads, which controls the sympathetic arm of the autonomic nervous system, what a big word is that, we can actually train that area to become less active. And the result of that is that you're less sympathetic and you're more parasympathetic. You're more relaxed and you're less jumpy and anxious and twitchy and like that. Now, it doesn't happen because something goes down the wires into your brain. It happens because we're training your brain. We're asking it in a passive way through just presenting it with what we want to happen and then rewarding it when it does happen. We're conditioning your brain to behave in a certain way that's more effective for you in terms of the symptoms that you're presenting with. Now, the other interesting thing about the infraslow is that it connects the brain areas. So your big brain networks are connected at these infraslow frequencies, just like MRI. It's the same frequency, basically. Although they're using blood and we're using electricity, there's the same periodicities, if you will, another way of saying same time. So what we can then do is we can make sure that your large behavioral networks are actually communicating to each other. And that's another form of pathology, is when they don't communicate well. So for instance, if your salience network, which determines what's important, is not connected to your central executive network, which is how you get things done, then you're going to sit in class or at work and not be able to figure out what needs to be done because you have no executive functioning or little or poor executive functioning. So, and finally, with the infraslow, the important thing to note here is that it's directly related to the autonomic nervous system. So this is how we can increase sympathetic drive or decrease sympathetic drive, increase parasympathetic drive or decrease parasympathetic drive. That's the autonomic nervous system. And those two systems that are more like a yin and yang, rather than a off and on. They're really involved in almost all human behavior. And it's the dysregulation in that system that probably accounts for, 75 to 90% of all psychopathology. And if we can regulate that, then we're much better able to make better decisions because we have the right fuel. think of it as like gasoline. You need a certain, level of, anyway, you need the right fuel to accomplish behavior in the world. And we can organize that. We can regulate it with Infraslow. So there you have it on Infraslow. The other kinds of neurofeedback are training different ways. Like there's alpha theta training, there's SMR training, which is 12 to 15 hertz. And so there's also, as I've mentioned earlier, there's Z-score training and others. But this is a very particular kind of training that takes its powerful nature from its centrality in cortex and in human behavior. All right, that's it for today. I hope you'll join us again for the Neuro Navigator and more insights into neurofeedback. Thank you.